Hello and welcome to Women Engage. We are so pleased that you could come and join us on our program today. We have an interesting topic. We're talking about a marriage topic today, and we're talking about dealing with difference in marriage. So I want to begin by welcoming our panelists today for our discussion. And all of us on the panel today are married, and we're all different in some way from our spouse. So I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself to the audience, tell us your name, and tell us in which way you, and at least just one way, that you and your husband are different. Well, my name is Jocelyn Isabidier. My husband and I are different in many ways, but I think one way that we're different is the way that we talk. I talk far more than my husband does.
My name is Debbie Maloba, and I'm married. We have many ways in which we differ, but one that I think is very strong is in terms of money. When it comes to plan and to use money, that one we differ.
My name is Miriam Razafia Rivoni. My husband and I differ a lot, but I believe that the place where we differ the most and that affects us the most is the way we see God. I see God differently than the God figure is different in my mind and in my worldview than my husband.
My name is Rose Misati. The difference between my husband and I is like night and day. But one that is very outstanding is the fact that my husband is extremely quiet and very reserved, and I'm very loud.
Okay, so it's very interesting because each of you, as you were introducing yourselves, it seemed that you were saying that there are many differences. And actually, even in my own mind, I just realized, oh my goodness, which one am I going to choose? Because there seem to be so many ways in which we are different. And yet, we have been in our marriages for several years now. And the difference has not made us fall apart. And so, we've individually talked about what makes us different from our husband, but generally speaking, what creates differences in marriages between the spouses? What are some of the things that make us different, generally speaking?
Our nature is one of them because our personalities are different. And another one is the way we were brought up and where we were brought up. So that in a way determines how we respond to situations.
We are two different people. Though we come together, still we keep our differences. He thinks differently, I think, but we need to adjust and to accept each other. Yes.
I also think it's also because of the societal expectations. So we are different because since already childhood and the environment, we are expected to act and think and talk a certain way, whereas the boy child does not have that same. So we grow up with that expectation still hanging in the back, even if we try to somehow say, no, actually we can accommodate, but then it comes back and the reality is that we have to behave differently and sometimes think differently and become different individuals.
That's the gender difference. Yeah, you're a woman and you're married to a man, and so you will automatically be different, just because of that. And it's interesting because we talk about before marriage, we talked about finding someone that you're compatible with, and sometimes we think compatibility means sameness. Okay, but then how do we balance being compatible and being different when it comes to the reality of marriage? Does it mean that because we're different, we're not compatible?
No. Sometimes even the differences form the basis for attraction. Because like in my case, I talk a lot, so I needed somebody to do the listening so that we are not competing. However, in marriage, sometimes they say the things that attracted you are the basis of even arguments, but it's important to accommodate one another so that the one, for example, who talks too much does not domineer, and the one who is quiet can try and be responsive. So accommodation is very important.
Yes.
And I think these differences make us, it helps us to balance our life. Because if in our lives, both of us are yes, 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 things will not work. You need sometimes to challenge each other so that at a certain point you come together.
But I also think it is part of life. I mean, our friends are different than us. So I don't know. I remember when I first married, my friends have always been very different because I was in a different setting. And therefore, the expectations of being the same or to have uniformity somehow within the marriage is somehow lessened by that reality that even my best friend is not like me, so why should my husband be like me? And at the same time, it helps us, like she was mentioning, and it is an important thing, in that when there are problems, then you value that difference. My husband is very hands-on and very practical. I am very different, I have more in the mind and ideas. So anytime I will get something done, I launch the idea, he gets it accomplished. Imagine now the two of us being the same idea people. Our house will be chaotic. So I think that helps. It definitely that it helps. And at the same time, you value that element of there is difference, but the compatibility comes in the usefulness of that difference.
Yes. And I think also sometimes you get surprised at the way in which you're different. I think before you get married, you've spent some time getting to know each other before marriage. You sometimes know, okay, we're different in this, we're different in he's quiet, I'm more talkative. But then there are sometimes some differences that you think, I had never even thought of that. Like when Marianne, when you were saying you're a ministerial couple, and you're Christians, Adventists, and then when you're saying the way you think about God is different, that was like, Okay. And I had to think about that one a little bit. And then I had to, in my mind, I was asking myself, maybe even the way I think about God is different from my husband. Because you might all be Adventist, you might have the same fundamental beliefs and all of that. But then you find, actually, the way that you relate to God is different.
Yes.
And sometimes that fundamental difference in the way, like some people see God, they respect him, but they see him more as the holy God, the authoritative God, the one who deserves honor and respect, which is true, which is exactly a true picture of God. And then some other people, because of maybe their own personal experience and how they came to God, for them, God is the Father that they can run and embrace, the one who accepts them for who they are, the one who, so yes, he's holy, but that's not how they see him. He is the one who bends down and reaches low and pulls up. Both of those are correct, but yet it can change even the way that you relate to life because of the way that you relate to God. So it's interesting, some of these differences. But I think we're in general agreement that different can be actually good.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Yes, it's beautiful. However, in spite of the beauty, it does bring challenges. So what are some of the challenges that come out of the differences that we have with our spouses in our marriages?
Well, precisely because of that element of us seeing God differently, we had challenges in rearing, I have 2 girls, in rearing the children in their religious life. My husband sees God as good, holy, but distant, reverent, you whatever he says, you do. You don't discuss, you don't question, you do. That's the way my husband sees God. And everything he approaches is that way. He will not give you explanation. He says, no, the Bible says that. That's what we have agreed on. This is what the doctrine says. We do. No question, no discussion, no theorizing, no philosophy over it. You see, I see God probably because of my upbringing as a God you can trust. And because you trust, you need to know more. Because you cannot trust somebody you don't know. So then I had a challenge raising the children because my husband would say, well, what does the Bible say? And then I would say, well, we still can ask God how do we understand that? How are we supposed to understand that? And because I have girls, they run to me. Then my husband will say, well, how come they are running to you and then they are not listening to? I said, but they are listening. Yes. But it's just that they need to understand how far and what are the implications of trusting God there and understanding that God is safe and good. You see, sometimes we say God is good, but not always safe because he's so holy. Yeah. And yet, so there that to worship in truth and in spirit, it was very hard. And I remember my children were very bit, listening to me, listening to Father a little bit, growing up a little bit in and out. And it was, now my girls are early adults, and it's now that they, for them, to their benefit, they have been able to reconcile these two images of God, which we have not. My husband and I still disagree up to now, but they have been able to do so. But it was very, very hard challenge, because he would say, you see, because you're telling them that they're not doing what they should. And I said, well, they are, but let them grow in it. You see?
For me, I needed to speak about everything that has happened during the day and to connect. But my husband wanted to have a space where he would be quiet and just chill out and relax. And I would speak and keep asking, why are you not commenting? Say something. How was your day? Say something. And I realized that with time I was nagging him. And I felt that he may resent me. So I realized that I don't have to exhaust all my words on him. So I discovered I can talk to my friends, because for me, I find it therapeutic to share. So I developed close relationships with friends I can trust. Now my children have grown, so we can also share. So that way, then I relieve him the burden of having to listen to me. And when we have gone through a situation as a family, I find healing through sharing, giving a testimony in church. But my husband would rather keep quiet. So we agreed, I don't know whether we discussed or it came about, that even when we go through a situation, I will go and share my story. I don't mention anything, even when he's the one who was sick, affected, I don't say about him. I just say, this is the way in which this affected me. And so we have found a balance. So me, I share, he prefers to keep quiet. Yeah, but it took time, but we are eventually getting there.
It takes time, that's true.
Yeah.
Debbie, you wanted to say?
For me, I always think projects. Now, when I come up with a project, I just share with my husband. It requires money, ideas. Now, sometimes he doesn't agree with me. And he takes time to think about it before he gives his okay or yes. But for me, I'm a quick woman who needs an answer, an approval. So when he takes time, I always tell him, you are too slow. And that sometimes makes me upset a little bit. I'm angry because I need it to be done. But he takes his time. He thinks about it. Now, that time, for me, I think he spends a lot of time. So in terms of time, I wanted to have something that is quick done, but for him, he's not in a hurry. And for me, that is a challenge. Yes.
I think there are also many ways that I've been challenged, some of them similar to at least what some of you have said. But I think the one that I'll share is I think that one challenge for me is I didn't know until I heard about Chapman's book, The Love Languages. And I didn't really appreciate that we love differently and that we communicate love differently. And so there was a time when I would get so frustrated with him because he was not, at that time I didn't think of it in terms of he's not speaking my love language, but I was just feeling I was feeling unappreciated. I was feeling unloved, I think would be too strong a word, but you feel, and then the things that he was doing, which later I realized were to show me love, I was not actually seeing it as they were actually annoying me. They were annoying me because that was his love language. And so when you have two different love languages, when your husband has the love language is physical touch, it's very physical. And then your love language is words of affirmation, and the words are not coming, but the touch is coming, yes, And I remember reading when I first heard about that love languages and realizing, Oh, so someone might be shouting at the top of their voice that they love you. You know, if their love language is acts of service, and he doesn't say anything, but yours is words of affirmation, and he doesn't say he loves you, but he comes home and he actually does things. He fixes things. He works hard to provide for the family. He's doing what he feels shows you. Or maybe he's buying you gifts or whatever it is. And then you're like, this man never tells me he loves me. The last time he told me was when we were dating 15 years ago. And you feel unloved. He doesn't affirm you. You feel unloved. And yet the man every day is shouting with all his strength that he loves you. So for me, that can be a challenge. The difference in even the way you communicate love can make you feel unloved. Even when this person actually is trying to communicate love with everything they have. And if you have two different love languages, each of you is frustrated, feels unhappy, feels unappreciated. And that was for me the challenge, the difference there. And it's only when I understood this concept of the love languages that even the way we communicate love, not just with our spouses, but even with our children, is different. And that it's important for me to learn his love language so that when I want to tell him I love him, I don't speak my language. I speak his language. And he has to learn my language. So when he wants to communicate love to me, he doesn't speak it in his language, but he speaks it in mine. So that was a challenge for me. How do you express love to someone and because of the difference?
Yeah, I think it's important to seek to understand before seeking to be understood. Understanding the personality type of your spouse and also where they grew up and how they grew up. Like for me, I was raised by a mother who was very strong-willed, and because she was a widow, so she was doing everything. So I knew I didn't see her submitting to any man, really. She would make decisions and do everything. Then my husband was raised in a totally different home where the father is very patriarchal. And so the father is the one who had a voice. So when we got married, I'm doing everything. I don't have to consult. And then he's looking at me and wondering, okay, so how does it go? But because he's very gentle, he would not say, but I would see, he looks, oh, you've done this, you've done that. So I took time and tried to understand how he grew up and how I grew up, and then I started to appreciate and to learn how to accommodate. Yes.
But I think also, and on top of that, the understanding and the dialogue, in other words, you have to talk. I remember very well, when first year, I remember even when my husband was standing when he told me that, he said, Marianne, you don't have to agree with everything I think, with everything I say, with everything I do. But you can understand me. And I don't have to agree with everything you do and everything you think. And we were specifically talking about probably that religious thing about God. And he says, I respect that, how you think of it. I understand that and I respect that. And then you should now make an effort to try to understand me. And when you don't understand me, you tell me that you don't understand and I'll explain. And so therefore, over the years, that dialogue of each other talking or each other writing, we write in our family a lot. So he would write, and I remember one time he wrote an article or something, and he was explaining the way his wife, which is me, the way his wife sees God and the way he sees God. Yes, in an article. And when I read that, I sort of, come to sort of a dialogue and understanding where he's coming from, why he thinks the way he thinks, and it all came out of those, talks and all those writings and all of those things. So dialogue and understanding is very helpful.
And I think also just the other thing I've got from you, Marianne, is to accept it's okay to be different, because sometimes we try to change the other person. Exactly. We try to make them like us because our way is better. Like one of the other differences I have with my husband is that I think quicker than he does, and I think through talk. As I'm thinking of an idea, before I reach the end, I'm thinking through it and talking through it so that I get to the idea quickly. He'll be quiet, he'll be thinking, and sometimes it used to drive me absolutely nuts. I used to feel like I wish there was an accelerate button or like a pedal that I could press down to accelerate the thinking. And I would look at him and I would like, think quickly, just get to the point, And then I realized, but he's not going to be like that. And I used to at first want to, show him how to speed it up a little bit. But then I had to accept that's not him. So I had to learn to wait. And actually, I don't know, somehow it just, I don't know, maybe God miraculously made him think quicker, but it doesn't bother me at all anymore. I don't notice it. I don't notice it, but I remember the first 2 years of marriage especially, I used to notice that gap between how long it takes me to get to something and how long. And I think you just reach a point and I think you accept, like your husband is saying, I can understand that we're different. I don't have to agree. I don't have to change you to be like me. I don't have to change to be like you. And we can just leave it that we're different.
Yeah. And also the attitude, very important. I remember when I got married, you see, the culture is very strong. Now, sometimes my husband, you could feel it, that he has that pressure from my in-laws. When time comes for him to carry the baby so that we go together at church, he seems to not really take that responsibility. Why? Because according to the culture, the husband is not supposed to carry the child. For me, it was not easy to accept. So I was like, what attitude? What's wrong? But after all, I understood that, yes, I need to be patient. It will come. So I had to carry the baby. Oh, it's okay. Today, it's different. Even those who are giving him pressure, they understood. Yes, they appreciate. So the attitude you take also, it makes a difference.
And something else I would like to add is trust.
Yes.
Like for me, who is given to many words. But when I have spoken something, I don't remember. So if you tell me yesterday you said this and that, I get very scared because I can't remember. When I've just said it, I'm done. Now my husband has very few words which are very meaningful. So I realized what I say or what I do many years down the line makes a great impact. So sometimes you will remind me, like last year at such and such a time when you were in a red skirt, you said this and you meant it. A year later you said this, and I would start laughing because I found it very strange that you can remember. And many times I couldn't even remember. I could not even have any recollection. And he would get very upset because I'm laughing over something that hurt him. Yes. And then with time we talked, I told him, you will be hurt several times because I will not remember. And when I've said it, ask immediately, then we discuss. So over time, then he had to learn and we had to cultivate that trust. That when I say something, it's not because I want to be mean or something. But at the same time, I had to cultivate my sensitive side. I'm really trying. I'm not there. But I had to try to be sensitive and say, okay, when I say something with him, let me think first. Because when I say it, I will not take it back. And I don't have the ability to remember. Or when he tells me, you remember that person said this that time and they hurt you? I don't remember. And he couldn't understand, but how can you not remember somebody who was mean to you last week? I tell him, I dealt with it. I don't remember. So trust is very important. So that when somebody says, they don't mean ill, or when they do something, they don't mean ill, that's them.
Yeah, that's a very important one because you trust their intention. You have to sometimes ignore the words and how they made you feel, but you have to trust that their intention is not to hurt you. That's a very, very important point. Now, as we're coming to the end, unfortunately, we're running out of time. I just thought about, some scriptural references that we can use to help us to deal with these differences. Ecclesiastes 4:9 and 10 is a scripture we all know well. It says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, one will lift up his companion. But woe to him who was alone when he falls, for he has no one to help him up. I like that scripture. And, we talk about the fact that we're 2. But I think it even makes more meaning when you think about it as it's easier to lift someone up if you have not fallen. If both of you are the same and you've both fallen, who is going to lift the other up? So the difference, the way that God made us different, is just like when Paul uses the metaphor of the body. Not all of us is going to be a brain. Not all of us will be a heart. Not all of us will be hands. But it's the difference that gives us strength. The difference in the functionality of the body is what makes the body strong. So when I fall in one area, because of my background, because of my personality, because of my understanding, my husband, who is different from me, can lift me up because he has not fallen in that area. So my weakness might be his strength. And so I like that one. So unfortunately, we've come to the end of our time. And I'll just ask you maybe to think about one last thing that you can give as a message to our audience who might be listening out there about what they can do to deal with a difference in their marriage. And particularly if there's a young couple, all of us, it seems we've gone through those stages where we've had to grow, and we're still growing. We're still in the process of growth. But particularly in the first few years of marriage, some of these differences seem like mountains that are insurmountable. And so just a word that you could give. I'm going to ask if Rose can begin for us.
A difference can be beautiful, and we are all united in diversity. So it's important to embrace the differences and to help build each other up. We need to fight from the same team. So we are not fighting each other, but we are together and we are fighting the common enemy. That's what I would like to say today.
For me, I would like to say that you have to remember why you first were attracted to that person to begin with. And in spite of the difficulties, in spite of the adjustment that you have to go through, and sometimes it may take longer, we think that maybe later on we'll become compatible or something, but it may never come. It doesn't matter, you still love each other. So continue and love each other, because after all, that's what matters.
We are not competing in our marriages. We need to work together, to be united, to use our weaknesses as strength that will build our marriages.
I would like to say that dealing with difference is one of the ways that marriage becomes an institution that's not just geared towards our happiness, as we often think, but also towards our holiness. God instituted marriage so that for many things, but one of the things is through marriage, we learn to have the character of Christ. We learn patience, we learn kindness, we learn to be long-suffering. And often it is these differences that bring out all of these qualities. And so as you deal with the difference in your marriage, remember that God brought you together with your spouse, not only for your happiness, because yes, a good marriage will make you happy and also be a blessing to your children and to the community, but also for your holiness. Allow God to work through the difference to make you holy, Christ-like. That is my prayer for you and for all of us here. Thank you so much for joining us. God bless you.